I was talking with someone the other day too about. Did we mention this before in the podcast about the thing that you use to knock down weeds in the yard before?
Oh yeah, trimmer. What do you guys call it? Weed whacker or something. Is it a weed whacker? That is amazing. Weed whacker. Do you know, I've completely lost track of the podcast episodes that we've done, you know, like completely lost track. Like Ben messaged me this morning, which is another great team member at SBL. He messaged me and he was like, oh, great episode on haters, man. I was like, oh, we did one on that, right? I couldn't remember. That came out yesterday. So, yeah, go on.
On what? On what was it?
On haters. Haters. How to deal with haters. Yeah, we did, yeah, like way back when. If anybody's listening to this and thinking, what the heck are you guys talking about? We actually recorded 4 or 5 before we released any because Phil, who's the operations director of SBL, when Ian and I were like, hey, we want to do a podcast, he was like, yeah, great, but you've got to get 4 in the can before we release any. Otherwise...
And Phil knows. Phil
knows. He does. Otherwise, he's going to be chasing us, or somebody's going to be chasing us. So, rightly so, Phil made us, you know, I was going to say film, but get 4 or 5 podcasts in the bag. But the unfortunate thing is now I've completely forgotten what we talked about in like past episodes. I've got no idea.
We should maybe keep a list running.
I know, yeah. Hey guys, if you've been tuning in, massive thanks, because like I've got some really great messages on Instagram. I'm sure that you have too, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's been really fun to hear from you, and like just to hear that, you know, some of it has been inspirational or helpful. It's incredible. I mean, what more can you ask for? It's great. So thanks.
I felt the pressure. I'm feeling the pressure. It was cool because, like, just for perspective, like Ian and I have been turning up every week and like recording these podcasts, and nobody's been listening to them. So we've just been kind of sort of like flying free. I wonder what people think about this. We don't know because we're not releasing them yet. So we've just been kind of sort of like winging it. But now. That people have been saying, hey, great job. I'm like, I'm like, sort of like, I'm a little nervous. I'm sort of, like, and obviously if you are listening to this, I hate to sort of like, you know, say, go and leave us a review on iTunes and stuff. But seriously, it would be amazing if you went onto iTunes and said, you know, podcast is great, Bass Player should listen to it, yada, 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 give us a review and stuff like that, because it helps it come up in the rankings, and then other bass players like yourself can actually find it on iTunes. Side note, I kind of hate iTunes. Well, I don't use iTunes. At least on my Mac, I've got this sort of like thing about iTunes. It should have been what Spotify was, but never mind. And we are coming on Spotify.
I agree.
We are going to make it on Spotify. Travis said that there's some issue with it. I'm not sure. I can't use my iPhone barely anyway.
Because it's got dirt from the yard in it, and you can't plug it in.
Dude,
it's got all
did I tell you that story? It's still not working. It's still, it's covered in mud. It's got mud in the speakers. I can't hear people properly on it. Yeah, it's caked. Yeah, the screen's cracked and everything. Anyway, what have you been up to this week, man?
What have I been up to? I've been making content. I've been playing the bass. My kids have been so sick, and isn't that a crazy thing during the pandemic era? When your kids get sick, I just immediately go to, oh my God, it's COVID. I don't know. I'm going to put this bass down. I go to like a terrible place mentally, and then I try not to be like, to the kids, like, it's COVID. You can't, right? Like, and my son was on the couch the other day, just like, this was yesterday, just lying down, curled up into a ball, feeling terrible, having a fever, and he was crying into his blanket, I don't want to die. And I thought, oh my God, like, have I done that to him? Or, you know,
man.
And then I sat down and gave them like the full on look. Even if you have COVID, chances are you're going to be okay. Like, you have to like level with the kids and say, I know this seems so scary. The world went from everyone, you know, is just doing their thing to now everyone is masked, everything changed. And they're like, why? And they're doing it because we're telling them that they had to do it. But they're also, then when they feel like maybe they're sick with it or something, oh man, they're so scared. So anyway, we've been dealing with that. And we're actually getting them tested today. And I like, fingers crossed that they that they don't have COVID. Anyway,
Yeah,
yeah. Have you guys been through some stuff?
Yeah, you are way kinder than I am. You're way every time, I kid you not, like this is like once every couple of days, one of the kids will cough and I directly afterwards will go, COVID. I love that you're being like a really supportive parent and I'm literally like, I'm just like, COVID. It drives my eldest round the bed. I have not got COVID, Dad. I'm like, oh, whatever, mate. But yeah.
Best of luck to you. Best of luck to you. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, we've been through some stuff with, yeah, man, like it's been fine. Like I'm really like, I'm half the man today. I'm just like absolutely battered. I'm a bit ill at the minute, to be honest. I'm just, I'm trying to find out whether, I can't figure out whether I'm just sort of like exhausted or ill. It's one of the two. And both of them feel crap, just to put it out there. Like, both feel crap. I've just had, it's been just like a crazy 3 week, like talking about Phil earlier, right? You know, our ops director, like he was like, oh, just to warn you, the next few weeks are going to be crazy. And I was like, yeah. Whatever, dude. Whatever, dude. I can take it. Yeah, I can take it.
I'm Scott Divine, Phil.
Yeah,
you know
I was like,
I'm Scott Divine.
Whatever. Well, actually, he was right because we were doing this live 10-week intensive called the Fretboard Challenge. So I've been doing that every single week. Obviously, I need to prepare for that and stuff. So I've been doing that. We've been filming the Jazz Accelerator, so I've filmed like 25 hours of content over the last few weeks. I've been working with Eric. Lord. Shout out to Eric to actually put all of that together. We've been doing YouTube videos. And then we've got this all of this stuff coming up that I've been filming for. And then on top of that, it's sort of like it all compounded this week, basically. I had this great idea. The guys, like Nate, basically. Nate was like, hey, we need to do like a video to tell people about Players Path for this promotion that's coming up. And he wrote the script. I was reading the script. You might have seen some of these videos on the in the internet chat that we use.
I'm hoping it's the one. I'm hoping it's the one I'm thinking of. But keep going.
Yeah. So I'm like reading this script, and it starts out. He's like, why isn't learning bass like learning to ride the bike? And I'm like reading the script. I'm like, and it was funny, but it wasn't written as if it was funny. But in my mind, I was just thinking we could actually make this really funny by sort of like one of the lines is, let me actually, I think I've got the script on here actually. It might be on a tab somewhere. Okay, yeah. Check this out. So this is the line. Why isn't learning bass online like learning to ride a bike? And then it says, well, number one, you have a super clear goal. You can either ride a bike or you can't. And I read that in my mind, but then I thought, wouldn't it be amazing that directly after that, if I just sort of like flip over the handlebars of an actual bike? And then I read a little bit more of the script. I'm like, oh no, this is, and then because the next line says, well, number two is that you have milestones along the way, like riding with training wheels on, or riding when a parent's holding onto your saddle. And then in my mind, I imagine me riding with somebody holding the saddle of the bike, with me shouting abuse at them to speed up. And then, so there was all of these lines that just kind of sort of like, I was just like, we can't miss this opportunity to make a funny video about this.
Right.
So yeah. And honestly, like a few guys did not want to make this video because the timeline's so tight, right? They're like, this isn't we just haven't got enough time. I'm just like, we have to do it. We have to do it.
Did you do it? You did, right?
We did it, man. We did it the other day. Yeah. It was like full on, yeah. So in the video, it's just like a video about Players Path, which is like a learning system inbuilt into the membership at Scott's Bass Lessons, right? You know what it is, Ian, right? So
yeah, of course.
And it's sort of like a promotion video for that, but you know, I wanted to just make it different, make it fun and stuff like that. Anyway, so we had this like little meeting about it with the guys, and then Alan randomly said, because when I'm flipping over the handlebars, just to backtrack a bit, I was actually looking on Amazon the day before, or 2 days before we filmed it. I was like, if I'm going to flip over the handlebars of a bike, I need to land on something. I can't just sort of crash onto the bike. So I'm on Amazon looking at crash mats, trying to find a crash mat to buy. Man, it's it's wild out there. There's so many different variants of crash mat. I didn't know what to buy. I was like, what do I do? What do I do?
So, and little did you know, there's like a whole like crash mat podcast where there's two people talking. Right? I mean, right? Like it's like anything. I'm sure it's just insane that the amount of time and energy people put into every little thing. Right?
Yeah, it's like I just didn't know what to do. So, like, we're lucky enough. We've got like a little swimming pool around the back of the house, and I thought, well, if I can't get a crash mat, maybe I can ride into the swimming pool and flip over the handlebars into the pool.
Yeah, you can.
So I was like, that sounds good. That's good. That's a solid idea. So we decided that was the idea. And then Alan flippantly said something about after... Oh, it'd be so funny. Well, he didn't say it as if it was going to go in the video, he said, and then you'll probably hurt yourself and end up floating in the swimming pool, like dead, right? And then I was just like... That's how the video is going to begin. That's actually how we're going to begin the video.
That's great.
So it legit, right? The video starts out with me floating face down in the swimming pool like I'm dead. This is legit, right? Like I'm dead. My bike's in the pool, and my bass case is floating in the pool next to me.
Oh,
so I'm like with the gig.
Good.
So I'm face down with the gig bag and the bike in the pool, dead. And then it like rewinds out, and there's a whole thing, and then the sort of like the video starts. But yeah, so that's what we've been doing, like bits of that all week. But on top of that, obviously all of the other stuff, and then I'm recording. A friend's doing an album. So he like had a rehearsal last night. So, and then we're recording that on Saturday and Sunday, like all full days on Saturday, Sunday. Then I'm back in next week. Then I've got another weekend of recording Saturday and Sunday. So I'm like, I'm basically not going to have a day off for like 3 or 4 weeks. I'm dying.
I have so many questions and so many thoughts about this. But first of all, I can't wait to see that video.
It's gonna be good.
I feel like you should consider a stunt double, right? Like you need like you can't get hurt actually, because we all need you, Scott Devine.
Well, that's what Phil said actually. The first day I was like, I've got this idea, Phil. I'm gonna do this. He was like, please do not hurt yourself. Yeah. And my wife came home as well, right in the middle of filming it. And just to let everybody know, I hadn't mentioned anything to Lisa. Nothing. I was like, I'm not going to tell Lisa. I'm going to drive in. I'm going to ride into the swimming pool and flip myself off. She would like, she'd freak out. So I thought she was gone. I thought like, Lisa and the kids are gone. It's great. And then she came home just right then. And she's like, just like super not happy about it. She's really not happy about it. Because there's like a multitude of things that could go wrong. Number one, I could die. Well, number one, I could really hurt myself, right? I could really hurt myself. And that was like a consideration. The sidebar that just before I did it, I was like, oh, this might be a really bad idea. But everybody had told me. Yeah, but everybody had told me up to this point that like Alan had said, so Alan and Connor were filming it. Alan had said this could be a really bad idea. Phil had said this, please don't hurt yourself. Lisa was freaking out, and like in that moment, I was like inside, I was like, oh, this could really be a bad idea. But then externally, I was like, don't show fear. I was like the most confident. I was like, come on, I'm going to crush this. Inside, I'm crying. I'm like, oh God, this might be it.
Oh, that's so funny. I mean, just the clip of like the camera underwater and having to go in. It's so, I don't know when this podcast will come out, but just that little clip.
This might be out. Great. It might have gone out. Yeah, it'll have gone out by then.
There's just, maybe, right? I mean, this whole, who knows? Who knows?
So if anybody's watching the like Facebook or YouTube and suddenly you get like a pre-roll ad and there is like a dead bass player in a pool with a, do you know what I mean? Like, it's me.
That's you, Scott.
It's me, yeah. Oh, man. I mean, it was...
I love that you do that stuff. It's inspirational because then I want to, like, I'm like, oh man, what kind of video thing should I do? You know, like, I love that you're leading the charge on that stuff. This is the thing that I want to ask you. And that I think, like, if I were listening to this and not having you in front of me, I would want to ask you is, do you thrive when you're busy? Do you feel like, because I have thoughts about this for myself. Do you feel like when there's a lot going on and you're feeling kind of run down, is that truly a bummer and you can't wait for some R&R? Or are you excited about being so busy?
There's a threshold, right? So I like it. It depends. It's like so many things in it.
Of course. Of course.
So I'll tell you what I hate. I hate not doing anything. I hate it. Like, I just can't do it. I'm like, it's even talking about, even trying to say the thing, like not doing anything, not being busy is like, I stumble over my words. I'm like, oh God, this is like, I'm talking about death here. That drives Lisa round the bed. She's like, can we just chill today? I'm like, I get really, really itchy. So for instance, if the kids are with Lisa, let's say like they've got a weekend with Lisa, they're going to chill. They're going to watch an afternoon film and snuggle on the couch and like do all of that cool stuff. Get out of town. With me, I'm going to get them in the car. I'm going to drive them 90 minutes and we're going to climb a mountain. Do you know what I mean? And they're going to cry because they're tired. We can't cry anymore, Daddy. We can't walk anymore. I'm going to be like, well, we're like 4 miles. I'm like, this actually happened. Like, I mean, we can't walk anymore. I'm like, we're 4 miles from the car. We better get walking.
Yeah. Or stay here and get eaten by a bear, children. I mean, that's your call. That's on you at this point, kids. That's on you.
Yeah.
Man.
Wow. So I'm busy. But there is a threshold where I sort of like it can get too crazy. It can get too crazy. And I enjoy it kind of just before. I enjoy it just before it gets too crazy and I get too fatigued. So like too fatigued. I'm too fatigued now. I've done this week I've done 3 12-hour days. One of them was probably a 14-hour day. And it was just too... And what happens is I get ill. That's when I know. Like maybe if I was younger, it would be fine. I actually didn't work like this when I was younger. I was like super chilled and I was like kind of sort of just like bumming out basically, playing bass and chilling. But it's when I can feel that threshold of just like starting to get ill. Like I've done some stuff actually over in the States a few times, like a few kind of projects. When we went over, we were in the studio over in New York and we hired a studio and we had sort of like Felix Pastorius came in, Sean Hurley came in. Oh man, there was just like so many. Rich Brown came in.
Was that Andres too? Did he come in?
Andres came in.
Yeah.
There was we did sort of like 10 days back to back of like 12-hour days.
And it almost killed you.
Oh, like under my glands, like in my face, like under my tongue was so swollen. Like just like all like just like really just my body was just saying like get the fuck out. I mean, you're killing me.
Right.
So and not from like a stress level. I wasn't actually like stressed about it at all. I don't really get that stressed. But just from like an exhaustion. And just to put it out there, of course, when we like got back to the Airbnb on a night time, we weren't chilling, you know, like Gav and I, like one of our camera guys, we were like going to the pub and like drinking beers and doing all that thing. And then we're like another 12-hour day the next day, then beers. And I mean, and that thing. So when I do that, that's hard. And I did say that I don't get stressed, but sometimes like I will get stressed about stuff and I'm terrible at that. I'm like, I don't deal. I've got like there's like a threshold of, I wouldn't say that I wouldn't say that I'm sort of like I can take highly stressful situations. I wouldn't say that at all. It's just like I don't get stressed about it. So it's not a highly stressful situation. So I think there's two different things there. But when I do get stressed, because I very rarely get stressed, I don't deal well with it. I was actually like a legit bad dad this morning. Like legit. Like I was really bad.
Oh, what does that look like for you? I want to know.
Oh, well, what does that look like for me when I'm being a bad dad? It just... I think that I had sensory, like, this is really hard to sort of like put into words. I had sensory problems when I was a kid in that. So I was like I got overwhelmed by loud noises and kind of just, have you ever watched the film Falling Down with Michael Douglas? Just such a great film. He's in Los Angeles. He's stuck in mad. He's stuck in traffic.
I remember, and he goes crazy, right? He flips out, right? I haven't seen it, but I remember seeing the trailer. Yeah.
Okay, so it's a great film, man. That first scene, he's sitting in the car, and there's just like all of these things happening around him, like somebody's sort of like putting their sort of like windshield wipers on. Somebody's like beeping somebody. Somebody's having an argument next to him with their wife. And it's like all of these tiny little things. And it's just sort of like sensory overload. And ultimately he freaks out and leaves his car right in the middle of the freeway and just walks out, right? And it's like when I'm being a bad dad, it's always because of that. So if I'm sort of like really, really tired or I'm sort of like run down or something like that, which it very rarely happens, but I get that weird sensory thing where like both my kids will be talking to me at the same time because they do that all the time. I've got no idea. I'm not sure whether they do it. Like, do your kids do that? Like my kids, like they just talk at me at the same time about two different things. And I'm like, oh, and like from a sensory perspective, I don't know what to do about it. I'm just sort of like so confused. And when I'm a little run down or tired, I'm just like, oh, and it just, so I just get really confused. I'm not really sure of how to, like, I'm like, so I'll like start talking to one and then the other one's getting frustrated because I'm not talking. I'm just like, and I can't figure it out because I'm tired and run down. I'm just like, oh, I'm just a bad dad. and then I'll be like, hey, let's put the TV on and chill and watch some TV for half an hour. And that is the only thing I can think about or think of to get me out of that situation. So for me, it's like, hey, should we put TV on for 30 minutes? And I put it on. I'm just like, and then
you get a break. Yeah. You need a break.
Do your kids do that?
So we have a thing in our house around interrupting. My oldest daughter, who's 10. How old is Story?
8.
Story. Okay. So I think I'm just like maybe a year or two in front of you with the kid thing. And Everly, my eldest daughter, if anyone interrupts her, it's like offensive to her. So she shuts it down. My son Dashel, who's 6, we call him Dash. If he starts talking while she's talking, she goes, Dashel, I'm talking. And then so it's like she hates it. I don't mind it so much if they're both kind of, I'll try to like, oh, hang on, buddy, like, and address one of them. But my daughter shuts it down and now he started to do it to her too. So if they're talking at the same time, they can get, they really solve gnarly with each other.
Oh, they solve it between themselves.
They solve it. Yeah. It may not be pretty, but they're like, you can talk and then I'll talk, okay? And I'm like, wow. And I don't even know where that came from. But no, they do not tolerate with each other talking at the same time.
Oh, dude, like with my kids, it's like when they're doing that thing, when they're both speaking at the same time, it's like they don't even realize the other one's speaking. I'm just like, what? I'm like looking like back and forth. I'm like, can you guys hear this craziness? Like, and they're both speaking really loud because obviously subconsciously they realize, right? So they're speaking really loud, and it could, like, I'm not even joking, man. This could go on for like 30 seconds to a minute of just them both talking at me at the same time. It would just be like super confused. Like Lisa, my wife, she's great. She's just like, guys, you're both talking at the same time. But because I'm kind of like, I'm like a rabbit in the headlights, I can't even muster up that. I'm just like distraught. I'm just like, what do I do with this? Oh, help.
Too much. It's just coming at you so fast.
Yeah.
And it's harder.
Weird.
It's harder when you have flipped over your bike handlebars into the pool for SBL content. It's harder when you've been recording the Jazz Accelerator for endless hours. I was saying you need a stunt double. You need a stunt double, and you need an American bass double to take some of that off your plate, dude. Sidebar. Man. Every other comment on the YouTube videos that go up from me on the SBL YouTube channel is, I can't believe, like every other comment, like there's some very nice ones, but every other comment is, I can't believe Scott hired an American double to start doing the channel. Like, where did he go? and everybody thinks, dude, everybody thinks they're so funny when they're like, hey, hey, he looks just like Scott. Or like, haha, oh, it's Scott without a glove and an American accent. Dude, it is endless. It is endless. And it's so funny. Like, everybody that says that thinks they're the first person to say it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think there's repeat offenders, man. I think there's repeat offenders that do it every single time, just from different angles. They're just like, like Scott's looking weird today. Is it like, is his accent changed? And then the next week he'll be like, no glove. What's going on? And then the next one he'll be like,
dude,
it's endless.
I mean, I still, this could be right now for anybody watching or listening, this could be deepfake. We could be the same person, but I can't wait to be at a NAMM show with you or some kind of SBL event in the flesh. And there are two of us there. We're not the same dude.
How did they do that deepfake stuff, dude? I've seen that deepfake stuff on YouTube. It is
it's unbelievable.
Like that deep fake stuff, like I don't understand why everybody should know about this stuff. They can, if you haven't seen deep fake, like I've got no idea how they do it. They get somebody's face and like put it on somebody else's face in a video, but then it actually becomes their face. It's like, so for instance, I think they've got like Jim Carrey doing The Shining. You know, they've got Jim Carrey's face.
Right.
On Jack Nicholson's, and it looks like Jim Carrey. I think it could be somebody else, but I'm sure it's Jim Carrey's face. But it's like this alien thing. Do you know, like, obviously, and I'm not sort of like, I don't follow the sort of like UFO thing hugely or anything like, well, I'm a Joe Rogan fan and he's into it.
Like, he's so into it. Yeah, he's so into it.
Yeah, and they're sort of like, and they've kind of sort of like openly stated, like in various ways, like the US government, there's shit flying around the skies. We're not exactly sure it was. Like it's open. Like if you'd asked me when I was a kid, what's it going to be like when somebody's like, oh, by the way, there could be aliens, like there's things flying around, UFOs. Yeah, they do exist. I thought the world would come to an end. Like literally, people would stop their cars in the street, like start talking. Have you heard the news?
And everybody's like,
is actual. Like nobody cares. Everybody's just like, oh, have you seen this new dance on TikTok? I was like, I haven't seen the new dance, but there's aliens. I'm like, what is going on? I don't understand society anymore. Like there's aliens, but people, they're dancing. You know, and put it on TikTok, and that's what people care about.
And so much crazy stuff has happened that, like, if the aliens landed, we'd be like, yep, totally. Of course they did. You know, like.
Totally, but we knew it, and nobody would care anymore.
I know.
I am really confused.
Oh, so check this out. So I have a relative that works in some kind of maybe top secret. I don't even know. Every time I would ask her, she would say, yeah, I can't, you know, just like, no, can't talk to you about this.
Wow.
But she did tell me that she said, okay, the alien stuff, it's far more likely because I want there to be aliens so bad. But I have some friends that are so furious with me about that. They're like, you're such a reasonable guy. Like, I can't believe that you're even entertaining this. We would know so much more. If people were being abducted by aliens and there were close encounters, everyone has a phone with a camera. There wouldn't be some, you know, this one thing or a few things from guys with satellites in the military. Like, there would be people that have, look at this, and it would go viral on TikTok. Oh, yeah, but I want there to be. And anyway, she says to me, here's the deal. It is so much more likely that is tech that we have. That
really? Is that what she said? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's so much more likely than it is from an alien world coming in, surveying the... more likely... it's Russian, Chinese, British, or American tech.
I want it to be. I'm with you, dude.
I'm like, that's no fun. I want it to be aliens, man.
Yeah, like, and I guess the kind of reason I want it to be aliens, maybe this is a really simplistic way of looking at it, but like, if it's aliens, they might be peaceful. That might be peaceful. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's legit. I mean, that might be just sort of like surveillance things going on. Do you know what I mean? They're checking out what the human ants are doing. Let's go see. I mean, like, let's go whatever, right? But if there's people using sort of like crazy technology and developing crazy technology in sort of like, you know, the US, the UK, China, Russia, or whatever, it's probably not for good stuff. I mean, it's probably it's likely military based or something like that. It's sort of like, it's just the way it is, isn't it? It's like when you watch the news, you never hear about sort of like the dog that was like rescued down the drain in the first 5 minutes of the news, right? It's not. It's all about the sort of like the murdering and the pillaging and all of that stuff first.
Of course.
Yeah. And like the world is falling apart. And then right at the end they're like, oh, by the way, Spot, he was actually trapped down a drain for 3 days and he lived. And then poor little Spot's getting pulled out. I'm like, they've got it all wrong. Put Spot right at the front end.
But you know that thing, man, that if it bleeds, it leads. Do you know that?
It does, yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Yeah. It sucks that, doesn't it? Yeah. Well, I mean, they could sort of like squirt Spot with sort of like fake blood, you know?
I love sleep deprived Scott right now. I'm into it, man.
I'm just such a mess. If anybody wonders why I'm so sleep deprived, I've been working like 12 or on even one night a 14-hour day, and it's just been a long week, but a long week in amongst a completely like crazy 3 to 4 weeks where I've just been filming a lot.
So check this out. Right before the previous version of this that we were doing shut down, do we have the intro? We're not sure. But we're not sure. But right before it shut down, we were talking about this work thing. And I was asking you about like, how do you thrive in it? There's a threshold. Check this out. I want your thoughts about this. I have a dear friend named Bruce Balgard, who's a great player, and he's been like a guru to me. Like if I ever have any questions about life, I always go to my friend Bruce, and he has this great thing where he said musicians have to be so careful not to be overworked in a negative way, because there's this thing about being busy as a musician is edifying to all the work and time that you've put in, right? Okay, so at SBL, we sell, get better at this instrument. Work your ass off to get better at this thing. We're going to help you, but you got to put in the work. It's hours and hours, right? There's the 10,000 hour thing. And then, okay, so maybe you've done a bunch of that and you feel, all right, I've put in a bunch of work. I've dedicated my life, most of us, that, you and I, to this instrument, to this craft. Then when there is an opportunity to make content, to do a gig, anything that involves the craft that you've worked your 20,000 hours on, you're going to do it no matter what, because it validates you. It validates all the work that you've done. It says, here is a reward for the tons of hours you've put into this. And he said, it's as if like an opportunity for a musician saying no to that would be like a regular person or whoever walking by a $100 bill on the ground and just not bothering to pick it up. No, I see it.
So interesting.
I see it, but I will not. No, we'll all do it because it's easy to do, and for musicians, there's an extra layer of it is validation. Oh, I get this opportunity. So I want to ask you, I think about that now every time something pops up for me. I try to balance it. Is this something I should say yes to that will further things for me versus just create more busy work for me? And I really try, because I'm a workaholic. Absolutely, I am. I want to do it all. I feel great when I'm busy, but then I also get run down. So anyway, dude, I'm curious, like, how you feel about all that crap I just blathered. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Like loads, yeah, loads. So in terms of, I think it's, so when you say like you're a workaholic, I am as well, but I would say that it's, and I had actually used that terminology, like I've used it before, but I think it's not that. It depends on what your work is, right? So like, I absolutely am in love with what I do. Like, I'm in love with the bass. I'm in love with sort of like figuring out problems and experimenting and just doing the thing. I'm just in love with it. So And I just want to do it all the time. So people talk about like life-work balance, and I'm not exactly sure that is a thing. Like I'm really not, because sort of like because I feel like I want at least my entire life to be integrated. I want my kids to be in here.
Yeah.
I want to talk to my kids about what I do professionally and what I
you don't
have
want them to talk
and
back to you at the same time.
No, not at the same time. No. So I think that in a way, I'm trying to, like, in terms of sort of like being a workaholic, yeah, like I love it. But in terms of balancing, like, yes, so I guess sort of like the headline there is, I think that some people are workaholic, but like a lot of the time it's just because they absolutely love it and they sort of like they fall in love with the process. And I think that there's not always a bad. I think that's slightly separate from doing gigs and doing sort of like projects that you shouldn't do. And I think that there is definitely, so that's a separate thing in my mind, the way I think about it. I think about, am I sort of like a workaholic? I guess you could say that I am. Yeah, definitely. It depends how you think about it. It depends how you sort of like, how you label it. But for me, I would say, I'm talking specifically about this guy, me right now, does he put in 110% every single day and try and integrate his entire life together so it's as much fun for everybody involved? I do. So that's what I'm trying to do. So I'm not kind of like going to, and I know it's different for certain people. They might be going to a cubicle and spending 10 hours a day there. Very different. So I can only speak to my sort of, what I guess my human experience right now of what I'm doing. But when it comes to doing projects or that you should or shouldn't do, and what to be involved in and what you shouldn't be involved in, I think that is a really, really fantastic kind of rabbit hole to go down. Like I try and strategically think about everything I'm doing, because my time is like really precious in terms of, because I think everybody's time is really precious. And I think that all of these projects that bubble up and become available to you, they're not all created equally. Some of them might get you close to your goal, and some of them might not get you close to. Some of them you might just like tread water or whatever. So I always really try and have I guess sort of like a goal in mind of what I'm going to try and do. And then also another element that fixes onto that is, how can I actually shortcut that? Because I do not want it to take a long time. I'm like really impatient. Yeah. So, so like, I'm not sure I'm exactly hitting on what, I think I am a little bit. It's like, I get what Bruce is saying. Bruce, your friends, that's his name. Yeah, like I get what Bruce is saying for sure. I think that sometimes that's driven from financial, like there's stuff happening from financial perspective as well.
Yes.
Everybody's like, I am just going to take any gig. I'm just going to take any gig because I need to pay the rent or I need to pay the mortgage or whatever it is. Yep. So I think that that's in the mix. But if we just push that off the plate for one second and just think about what to take and what not to take. I think it depends on your long-term goal of what, and I think that everybody should have a long-term goal. Otherwise, you kind of like imagine trying to get somewhere and not having a long-term, like not having if you walk out your front door and you just keep walking, well, you're just going to meander, and that is you literally meandering through life, and then suddenly you're at the end of your life. Goodbye. We don't know what's going to happen after death. You spent your life freaking meandering along the pavement, wondering where the hell you were going in life, rather than the flip side of this is like, okay, what do I want to do in the next 12 months? And I think that 12 months is a really, I don't know, it's a nice period of time to sort of like, it's not what we're going to do in the next month or next 2 months. It's like, what am I going to do in the next year? Did I say year or month back then? I meant to say
12. You said 12 months. So
okay, 12 year. Months. Yeah. What are you going to do in the next 12 months? Or what do you want to achieve? What is the sort of like goal in the next year by that end? And then for me, it's a case of reverse engineering that back. So I'll give you an example of where I failed. And this is to do with, so I really want to, like, I feel really ashamed to say I have never done my own album. And I know that is a real silly situation to be in because I've you know, got a really fantastic YouTube channel and, you know, and sort of like if I could go back to myself like 10 years and go and like say, hey, you'll have done this in 10 years, but you won't have released any music of your own, I would punch myself in the face. Right? I'd be just like,
yes.
So I am really ashamed of that. So anyway, and it's nothing but, well, it's complicated. It's to do with, the reason why I haven't, if anybody's wondering, is there's two things. So first of all, it's the time thing. I'm very focused on SBL. It swallows a bunch of time. Okay. That is a lame excuse, by the way. I'm just going to say that as well. I know it's a fucking lame excuse, but it's an excuse. I will still use that, but I am very...
Yeah.
But it's a bullshit excuse as well. I mean, I'm just calling that out because like when people give me excuses about stuff and they're like, oh, it's because
okay.
In general, I'm just like, that's bullshit. Like there's in most cases when people say, I haven't done it because of this, I'm like, that's bullshit.
Would you say this? Would you say?
Go on.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yes. The second thing is like it's a health thing. Like I have a lot of issues with my hands, and it's just. It is hard working around that. Like he says, wearing a wrist splint. Like it's just hard working around that. So for instance, so it adds all of these complications. So that's a less bullshitty reason. That is like a legitimate kind of sort of like a real reason is that I've got like focal dystonia. It is a bitch to sort of like work around that. So I don't know, for instance, if I can be, I'll give you an example, right? I want to do an album. I'm like, hey, I'm going to do an album. I'm going to book sort of like a bunch of guys and we're going to go into the studio for 4 or 5 days. I'm not sure whether like 2 days into that, my hands are just going to be like, no more. And I'm going to be like, oh, I'm so sorry, guys. We're going to have to do this another month. like that could actually happen. So it really narrows sort of like what I can do down, which is a good and bad thing. So and that is really sort of like why I haven't done anything like that in the past. So and if anybody's wondering what we're talking about, I've got this thing called focal dystonia. It's a neurological condition that affects the movement in my fingers, and it's done so for years. It's why I wear the gloves. It started 10 years ago, which ultimately is why I started SBL. So it's actually a great thing that I got this disease in the first place, but it's kind of sort of like a bummer at the same time. But if I could go back in time and do it all again, I would absolutely still get focal dystonia. 110%. No shadow.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because I wouldn't have done any of this without that. It's that thing that sent me down this direction. And I'm so blessed to really have had that.
Yes, and the thing that I was going to say to your first point of saying, it's an excuse, SBL takes a lot of my time. The thing I wanted to interject in there, and it's so crazy. This platform that we're using has this delay, so we're still trying to I feel like you and I are still trying to figure out the flow of and I'll interrupt you and it'll come late. And anyway, the thing that I rudely about interrupting
go on.
is this idea that it's not so much an excuse of I don't have the time because SBL takes up so much time. I wonder if it's more like you're prioritizing this thing. It's not so much that if you
I do that, yeah.
take your next breath without thinking about you got to make the record, you'd figure out how to make the record. But you have built this thing and you prioritize SBL. I mean, I see you do it every day. I mean, you're thinking about how to get more and better people always involved. You're thinking about what is the next thing, the next giveaway, the next campaign, the next course. This is a big, big, big priority for you. And I think that's okay. Versus you're not thinking, oh, what's the bridge going to be of that tune that I started writing 3 years ago? It seems like you're not so much in that zone. You're in the zone of running a business. And I don't think that that's a bad thing or oh, dude, you should have made you need to be making no, it's your priority right now.
Yeah.
And that's cool. And I think you can fucking own that.
Yeah, no, you're right. No, it is I definitely do prioritize that over anything that sort of performing or anything like that, for sure. Without a shadow of a doubt. So you're absolutely bang on there. But yeah, so, getting back to what I was saying about how to to look 12 months out and then plan back from there.
Yeah, please.
Like what I was thinking is I really want to do more performance stuff. Like that's what it comes down to. I want to do more performance stuff, but I've got these strange, like unique, I guess, sort of like boundaries that hold me sort of like, you know, in the place I am in terms of like the focal dystonia and stuff like that. So what I thought is, well, okay, instead of thinking about like creating an album and doing sort of like something that's going to take a few days, how about sort of like do something like I did with Josh Smith, okay? So I could do something like I did Josh Smith and Gary Novak. And so again, this is just thinking about, like, I'm thinking 12 months out. What do I want to achieve by 12 months? In 12 months, I want to, let's say, I want to have released 12 performances with some of the best musicians in the world. I know that sounds like a tall kind of thing, but just like, bear with me. So that's the goal, right? So I want to release 12 performances on YouTube, fully filmed with some of the best musicians in the world. I'm like, okay, well, how do I do that? Okay, so I did it with Gary and Josh.
Yep.
I did it with Ariel Posen and Pete Biggin. So like, how do I just do that over the years? So then I would reverse engineer that. I would think, well, can I do one a week? I mean, one a month. That might be operationally a little bit sort of like complex doing it. So maybe I can do one every other month. So I could do a 2-day recording session once every other month. Okay, I can do that. That's 6 recording sessions a year. Great. Okay, I can handle that. My focal dystonia is going to be fine. It's going to be wicked. Okay, so who do I want to be involved? So pick the guys. Okay, wicked. Yeah. Then I'm going to be like, okay, well, have I got time to write the music? That's a whole thing. Maybe we can do their tunes. Or maybe we can do like popular, maybe we could do Sissy Strut or whatever it is. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, it doesn't all need to be coming from me. So ultimately, that's how I would think about it. I'd be like, what's the goal? And then how do I actually shortcut it, batch everything up so it's just a bit more compact and it's not this thing that I'm doing every single week or every single month, and just trying to sort of like find a strategic way to actually make it easier. And then at that point, so I actually want to really do this. That's why I brought it up. It's something that I was planning on doing, and shame on me, I haven't actually done it. It was a few months ago. I was like, I really need to do this. And that was actually like after a day's thinking, this is what I'd come up with. I was like, okay, I can do this, you know. And like, I could go to New York, for instance, do a couple of days there. I could get Wayne Krantz involved in a one session, and then maybe, I don't know, like Stern doing another session, whoever it is, you know what I mean? Now I'm saying these sort of like huge names and kind of in disbelief, because I'm sort of like a little bit of a split personality inside myself, as in like one part of me is a huge fan and still like a 19-year-old kid bass player who, twofold. So like, I'm still that, but I'm also like still, for whatever reason, maybe sort of like, you know, insecurities or whatever, I'm still sort of like, why would they even do that? Who am I to ask these guys? Are you, like, Scott, are you completely insane? Like, what are you even thinking? Like, what? Why? I mean, like, why would they play with you? Because they're gods, and you're just like a 19-year-old bass dude internally, like, and I'm crap. I mean, internally. And the other side of my personality is like, just like talking to the other guy is like, you're full of shit. You are literally full of shit.
Yes.
Just reach out and ask them, because who gives a shit if they say yes or no? Reach out and ask them. If they say no, move on, ask somebody else. If they say if they say no, move on, and just carry on doing that. And like, you're probably going to get maybe like a, I don't know, 25% hit rate or whatever. Like, I'll just say this, that every time I've reached out to somebody in the past, whether it be sort of like, let's say Josh Smith or Novak or like Ariel Posen, to do a performance with me, like down in London, they said yes. And then every time I've reached out to anybody to do any sort of like session for SBL, even like when SBL was unknown and it was like 2 years old, everybody said yes.
Yeah,
Nobody said no. Nobody, because everybody's sort of like really into just being involved in projects that people are excited about. Like, especially like if somebody comes to you and they're sort of like, hey, I've got this cool thing that I really want you to be involved in, you know, and they give you a sort of like half decent pitch, you're probably gonna be like, yeah, this sounds pretty cool. Yeah, I'm gonna do it. You know,
I think a really important thing for people to remember, if you're putting yourself in these shoes, like, first of all, it's so great to hear you talk about the imposter syndrome thing of like, you've got one side of you that thinks I'm not good enough to do this, and then you have the other side of you saying, come on, no, just push through that. But the thing to remember is everybody feels that way. So people listening, you just heard Scott Divine talk about that for himself. I for sure have that as well. And every artist that is huge, or relatively huge, has those things. And artists are all narcissists in some way. I mean, from very small amounts to like malignant, like textbook, but in that somewhere, what feeds the beast is being asked to do something. Like when you ask an artist, hey, I love what you do. Do you want to do this thing? No matter what, that makes that artist feel good. Now, so like, if they say no, it's not necessarily because they don't want to work with you, right? Maybe it doesn't work in their schedule. Maybe it's just not really stylistically where they want to go. But anytime you ask someone something, to be involved in something, they are happy to be asked. Like, I had to get that out of my head of like, if I ask, someone's going to be offended. No. Every time I've asked somebody to do something, whether they could do it or not, they're never like, I can't believe you have the nerve to, I had this big beast built in my mind that they'd be upset or something that I would ask. And it's never the case, because artists are all like afflicted with self-doubt. So to be asked to do something makes them feel really good. So just start there, right?
Why do you think that is, man? Like, I've thought about that a lot. Like, I've tried to figure out like a bit about myself, but like about other, like, because once you, at least this was my experience, is that once I really recognized it, and I think that I'm not really sure when that happened, it was something to do with like I guess my journey was like doing the whole SBL thing, and then suddenly, I'm reaching out to guys to be involved, and like all of these guys are like Gary Willis did that. I mean, like, what the heck?
Yeah,
I mean, like,
amazing.
Jump out of Tucci. I mean, like,
yes.
I don't know. I don't know when it happened, but I definitely had a realization that my previous, I guess, mental kind of, or I guess my previous idea of the world was completely out of whack. I had that I'm not exactly sure when it was, but it was like, I was really wrong about how this thing works. Like, I was dead wrong. And here's the thing. I think most people are dead wrong. I think I'm hoping that I'm not the only one that's had that. But I think that I've had just like a bit of a weird, like, unique journey in that I've gone from super fan to actually being able to sort of like work with these guys and get them involved in SBL. And that was the vehicle that led me to be like, I was dead wrong about how this kind of sort of like professional musician thing, that whole space, and our internal kind of bullshit thing going on. I was just so dead wrong about how it actually works in real life.
I think that, yes, okay, you were dead wrong about it, but maybe not always, because what happened was you built this empire. Now, before you built the empire, now let's just say it was Scott Divine on YouTube and you reached out to Willis. Would Willis have wanted to say yes at that point? Or did you need to get SBL to a point where it was beneficial for him? I think sometimes people don't think about, like, they think, okay, what am I going to get by asking someone? Like, okay, I'm going to ask this artist to be involved, and I have no leverage, so I just hope that they'll say yes. I think it's about thinking about how you're going to bring that artist value, and how you are bringing artists value is bringing them on board this incredible sailing yacht of bass, right? So Willis would be I mean, and you're also hipping people to these greats that people don't know. I mean, not Gary Willis is an incredible player, but certainly no longer a household name to people coming up, right? And you're saying, hey, here is someone that was really beneficial and huge in my development growing up. but you have a platform where he would be crazy not to jump aboard the vessel. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
because you have something of value to him. Now, before you had that, he may not have felt like, you may have thought, he would add more to you than you do to him. But I would argue you're in the position of leverage now for a lot of these great bass players. And I don't mean great like they actually are great, but you're in a position of leverage. So I think, when I a really small version of what you have done with SBL, I reached out to a singer that I love in Minneapolis named Haley and wanted to do some duo music with her because I was so inspired by Andres Rott. And I thought, I don't know that I have the leverage to, but so what I brought to the table was, could we do this? And would it serve a purpose for you? Like, what could you use this video content for? And it turns out that she has a Patreon, that she needs to, she needs to feed the algorithm beast constantly, right? So that was the angle for me. Like, hey, what could you use this for something that would be really beneficial for you? So I think like people that are thinking about asking someone to collaborate, to be a part of something, to play on their record, you have to think about what value can you bring that artist, that band, that person? What can you do for them that will make them want to say yes? And you have figured that out with SBL. Who's not going to say yes?
Yeah, I didn't know that before though. Like I was just so scared. I was just so scared of asking anybody for anything. Yeah. Like, have you been...
Why were you scared though? Why were you scared?
Because nobody told me I didn't have to be. So, and I know that's, it's a really interesting thing. I'll get into this in a minute. It's because so my default, I'm sort of like a real believer that a lot of people's sort of like default kind of sort of like where they go mentally is sort of like fear-based, just because of the way that we're programmed. I mean, like we better not do it. We don't like risk in general. I mean, people don't like being embarrassed in general. We don't want to put ourselves out there in general. I'm generalizing, obviously, but we don't want to put ourselves out there. So we don't want to reach out to the wrong person and get sort of like a knockback. We don't want to, don't want to do that. And I just didn't know it. Nobody told me that, oh, you don't need to give a shit. You can actually just go and do it. And that is the truth, is that you really just don't need to give a shit and just go and do it. So, and here's the weird thing. Like, I'm a huge believer in sort of like learning at least one thing from every single person I meet. Like, I think there is something to be learned from every single person you meet. And there's so many really fantastic characters in my past where I can point to just these really amazing lessons that I've taken from them and that have changed my life and taken it in different directions. Like musical directors, bosses of mine when I was like Chris, like who owns Overwater Bases. Like there's so many different people and like little things as well that people say also. And I don't have to meet them either. It can be either online, like SBL. I started SBL because I watched a YouTube video. Like, that's actually what I did. I watched a YouTube video talking about online business. And I watched it and I was like, maybe I could do that for bass. And that's why I started it. And that guy changed my life and he doesn't even know it. But there was, interestingly, I can remember, I wasn't even told this. I just kind of sort of figured it out for myself. I kind of read between the lines. So, Yannick Guisdal, right? Fantastic, great bass player, right? Killer bass player. Everybody should check out Yannick Guisdal if you haven't already. He's a freak show, or in the best of ways. Anyway, so he comes out with this really fantastic album, and he's really young. He's super young.
Yes.
And like 20, or maybe like 21 or 22 or something like that. It was killer. And the lineup of the album was like Jojo Mayer, Mark Turner, like Mark Turner's sax player. I can remember like a bunch of sort of like heavyweights, okay? And I can remember seeing that and just thinking, oh, it was one of them sort of like moments where I was like, oh, He's one of them guys that doesn't give a shit, and he will ask people. He will put himself out there, and he'll just go and ask people. Yes. And then I kind of like, and in that moment, I self-reflected, and I was like, I'm not one of them people.
Yeah, sure.
And that is why I'm stood here holding his album, and I haven't got one. Right?
Yeah,
and that exact moment, that was just like, oh, I need to change. And I think within a few weeks of that, I'd reached out to Ed Friedland, and then I reached out to Danny Mo Morris, who was teaching in Berkeley, and then I reached out to another guy, and then I reached out to another guy, and then I reached out, and it was actually kind of sort of like born from that kind of in the moment. I was like, oh, he's one of those guys that doesn't give a shit about what people think, and he will just go and do it anyway. And I was like, oh, I'm not one of those guys. And I realized the massive impact that will have on your life. If you just give, if you just care too much about what everybody thinks about you and about being embarrassed or whatever, you will live your life sort of like so way under the threshold of where you actually could do. So it's just sort of like getting out underneath your own feet, and just the realization of you can do anything. Like everybody sits on the toilet at the end of the night before they go to bed, whatever, like everybody is the same. Doesn't matter. True. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's.
Oh, I love that Yannick. Yeah, I love that Yannick influenced you in that way. I mean, I remember, I don't know, 2000 teens watching his vlog all the time, and for me, it's so interesting. I was never ever into his music. I was just into his enthusiasm, and I never owned a record because I was never into really like jazz fusion, but I loved his educational push and his value on making content. And I just was like, it was so interesting to see someone else that liked the bass. I mean, because in the beginning, there weren't very many people doing that thing. I mean, Marlo, you, Yannick. I mean, those were the three people that I was checking out. So I remember thinking like, wow, like someone else's apartment. Oh, someone else's basses, pedals. Like I was just so fascinated by his content making
He
strategy.
really got it.
Oh,
he really got it. And what's really interesting about Yannick is that he got it and there was nobody else doing it. It's like now, it's kind of like the path's pretty well trodden. We all know it. I mean, you make content, you get on your social media channels, you do this. But like, he was trailblazing and he was a killer player. He wasn't sort of like, you know what I mean? He wasn't like great on the market himself and not a great player. He was like both. Yeah, it was really a very, very individual mix. And it was it was a great time actually to see somebody do that. And he did a great job of it. I loved watching that,
And even though I never was like, oh, I love this guy's playing or music, I didn't. He was so engaging in other ways that I was like, oh man. And of course, I could tell he was a great player. I never resonated with his values around like what he thought was important to work on. But I loved that he did. Like, I didn't have to feel the same way. I was just inspired that he was doing his own thing. That was actually very inspiring to me. And I want to go back to this thing you said around this have a year goal thing, because there was a thing that changed my life. But it's something that I'm realizing I might need to take further, and because I'm not a goal setter. And I think that I need to be, or when I hear you talk about it, I feel compelled, I feel convicted and pulled in that direction. For me, I was the guy that was in Minneapolis, I'm still in Minneapolis, taking every gig, right? And trying to be a professional and trying, and like, well, this is what I charge, and doing these things and playing all the cover band gigs and playing church gigs and trying to do everything and just, say yes to everything, because there's that thing out there, right? Say yes to everything. Then I saw Justin Meldal Johnson, and if anybody listening doesn't know who that is, he's a fabulous bass player, producer, lives in LA.
So good.
Played with Beck, played with Tori Amos. He's on a record called From the Choir Girl Hotel by Tori Amos.
Paramore? Was he on like Paramore? I think.
Yeah, of course. Yes. Then he became a producer, M83, Paramore, all these things. And he did did a YouTube, or there was a YouTube video filmed at a bass player seminar thing that he did, where he didn't even play the bass, he just talked. And someone asked him about session work. And it was something that I was kind of really wanting to get into. And they said, how do you charge? What do you say yes to? And I thought, oh my God, it's the golden nugget. How is he going to answer this? I can't wait to hear what his day rate is. I was so excited. And
I'm excited.
Oh, here we go. Okay, gearing it up. He said this thing that changed my life. He said, if it's cool, I do it. And the room was just sort of quiet. And someone said, can you explain that? And he said, yeah. So if I get excited by the ask, he said, he used the word cool. And it's been a long time since I've seen this. So this story could have maybe sort of morphed over time. I don't know how much of it is JMJ and how much of it is like me and my weird experiences. But he said, I use the word cool and that sounds shallow, but I just mean that feeling you get, that there's that like welling feeling of excitement. And
cool.
Everybody knows what that feels like. And it's different for everybody, right? So not like if it's cool by some metric. No. If it stirs that thing in you that makes you feel like a child, makes you feel excited, makes you feel that feeling like when you were first listening to music. He said that is always going to be more powerful than any session fee. He said, so for instance, say someone hollers at me and says, hey, will you do this thing? And I say, yes. And my session fee is, $1,000. And the person says, oh, I can't. Well, when you have the money. No, it doesn't work that way. His thing, he said, will I load my car full of basses and pedals and amps and drive 2 hours to somebody's home studio to do a track for $100? I will, as long as it gives me that feeling.
Yeah.
And I thought,
right. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, that really changed my life. So I have been operating since then on this idea of, does it make me feel that feeling? And obviously,
so you kind of took that on as like a philosophy to kind of sort of like use.
100% did. And obviously there's things that I do that don't fill me with excitement. I mean, there's the idea too of the gig triangle. We've probably all heard of this, right? Where there's money, there's the relationship, and then there's the content. There's the money you make, there's the hang, and then there's the actual music or the thing that you're making. Yeah. And if all three of those things are great, wow, amazing. 2 out of 3, all right. 1 out of the 3, maybe, But I up until that point was really trying to money, and that's what makes me a professional, is getting paid. But the thing that he said that I have experienced as well is that if you say yes to the cool thing, and again, cool is the feeling that you get, not outside metrics. The feeling that you get, what will happen is it will push you in the direction, because you'll play with that artist that you love. Another artist will hear it. It'll push you in that direction that maybe you want your career to go. Will it make you the most money of all time? Probably not. But will it make you really happy? Yeah, it will.
Yeah. If you're led by money all the time, you're going to get walled off by so many great situations that will lead to other things.
Yes. So that's been my mode of operation for a long time. But then I come in contact with you, Scott Devine, and you are creating an empire. And I use empire in the most loving way possible. But you are also setting goals, and you're doing the things that you love. And I go, boy, because, okay, if you're led by cool, and I promise I'm going to bring this back around to this thing we're talking about. If you're always just led by cool, the feeling you get, well, maybe then you're working on something for days that doesn't pay very well, and that sort of starts to, it's cool, but is it leading me to my goal? And I have been scared, I think, to say, here's my goal. this is what I want. Because, hey, man, I'm just trying to do that JMJ thing and let cool guide me. I'm just living in that zone of like, I'll do that. Oh, I'll do that. Oh, it makes me feel good. It makes me feel good. But is it leading somewhere where I really feel like I'm setting this goal and I want to find it still within the parameter of doing the things that make me feel that way? But boy, I think we would all benefit from hearing a little bit more about how you set a goal, what's an appropriate goal to set, and put yourself in the shoes, Scott, of somebody who they want to be one of the players. They want to maybe do sessions. They want to get on a tour. They want to start teaching online bass lessons. They're here. No one knows who they are, and they want to be click here. And I know that's very broad, but I want to know from you what advice you would give that person.
Oh, man. So if it was a teacher, I can tell you sort of like I've got different things for different individuals.
Of course you do. And I lofted up a really ridiculous, huge, that's a big thing to tackle. So
if you play a musical instrument.
But that's actually what I want to know. I want to make it broad so that you narrow it down and focus. Like, I want your take on it. So yeah, if it's a teacher, hit us, man. I think that it kind of, I think for me, I kind of like categorize things. So there's different goals in different buckets. Mm-hmm. So there's financial buckets. There needs to be financial buckets. I know that sort of like finances is sort of like people like, I don't want to talk about anybody's finances. No, I love it. I love that you.
But you think about it a lot, right? Everybody thinks a lot about their money, right? Like, have I got enough money for rent? All of that shit, right? So absolutely, sort of like I think that everybody should have financial goals, whether it be to earn $100 a month or $10,000 a month, whatever it is.
Yes.
You should probably kind of sort of like trying to figure out what it is that you're trying to get, and then see if that maps with your artistic goals. This is, I just have to kind of sort of like put it out there that I'm a real nerd when it comes to this stuff. I'm not saying that it's the best way. I'm just saying that it's one way. I think that Mendel Johnson would be, like, JMJ would be like, I don't think that he's thought like this. So, well, I don't think he will have, because he probably is much more kind of just like, lets the experience happen. And because of that has entered relationships in his life that have really sort of like helped him sort of like artistically kind of sort of like move into a great space, and probably financially a great space as well at the same time. I mean, sure. I imagine JMJ's not probably, he's probably financially fine.
He's doing all right. Yeah.
Yeah, he's doing all right. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think that you should have financial goals. And then does that map with what you creatively want to do with your life as well? Like, on the creative side. So for instance, I'll give you a hypothetical. I want to earn $250,000 a year. Okay. And you are let's say you're a musician. Let's say you're a wedding band musician and that's your bread and butter. Well, for me, like looking at that, I'm like, there's a problem. Because I'm just like, it's easy for me to say like £250,000 a year because I just know, I think in pounds, but let's just keep it $250,000. I don't know if that's a huge, like that sounds like a huge wage to me. Is that a huge wage?
Yeah. I mean, for sure, for a musician, that's an astronomical, unless you're a big songwriter but like for a gigging musician, I think that number sounds out of reach.
Okay, exactly. That's what I wanted. So I wanted to sort of like, because I think it's important to sort of like have expectations within what you're doing. And maybe it's like, you know what, I love doing this. I love doing this thing that is, that the ceiling's going to be like $80,000 a year, 100, whatever it is, but the ceiling's there and I'm going to be happy and content and I can. So my financial goal is like 80,000 a year, 100,000, whatever it is, right? But it's not 200, because if it doesn't match up, I think for me, my experience and the people that I've spoken with and interacted with over the years is that it causes kind of like friction and tension and confusion with where you're going, right? So for instance, I probably would, I'd take a wild guess that for JMJ, he's and I think that he stated it, he's probably not financially driven. He probably wasn't sitting there thinking that he's got a $250,000 goal a year in mind or whatever. So he's much more artistically driven. So, you know, it's about balancing it. And I think that that's cool as well to say, you know what, I'm actually not financially driven. But for me, like, I like to have some kind of rough goal on that side. But I also think that we should have, like, on the creative side as well, a goal. And that can sort of like be balanced. Or we can just think, you know what, I'm desperate to earn $250,000 a year. Therefore, I'm not going to be a wedding band musician. I'm not going to do that. I'm actually going to create an agency.
Yes.
And I'm going to I'm going to have 150 bands on the books.
Yes.
And they are going to be going out every single night of the year. And that's how I love music, yada, yada, yada. And that's how I'm going to
Because that's the first thing I thought of when you said wedding band 250. I immediately thought, how can you become the leader of that organization? You know, like that's immediately what I thought. Well, the only way to do that versus making the $300 a night or whatever a wedding band, you know, side musician makes in your town. In our town, it's about $300. You know, and that won't happen, right? No matter how many gigs you do.
Yeah. And just to put it out there, I know personally, like, you know, way too many musicians, and their bread and butter is those, like, it is wedding bands doing those gigs, right? And they are miserable with their artistic output, right? Yes, so I just kind of sort of like, I'm not sure why I wanted to mention it. I just wanted to give people context that it's tough. You can get into a situation where, you know, like, you're tied to the gig, right? And you can't expand from that, but you're tied to the gig because of the finances, because you need that. So there's a lot of different tensions and stuff. And I really wish for those guys, if I could get into their minds, I would be like, you need to set a goal and make a frickin' decision about what you actually want to achieve in 12 months, rather than just doing these gigs year in, year out, and then feeling miserable about it.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it's bonkers. It drives me utterly insane. If I think about it too much, it drives me insane. I'm just like, really, seriously, just have a goal. Just decide what you want. It doesn't matter what it is. Just decide what it is, and then you can figure out how to get there. So, and if they kind of sort of like thought about it objectively, they could probably think to themselves, I actually freaking hate playing in weddings like every weekend. I don't want to do this. And you know what? Maybe I'm happy with the money that I'm getting, but I hate doing it with this. So maybe I'm going to do something else. And I just think I'm the sort of like belief that if you really hate what you're doing, or you're just really like, there's hate and then there's unfulfilled. I don't think that anybody needs to be unfulfilled in life. I think you can be unfulfilled, but the issue is that it's kind of on you to actually make that happen. You can't 100%. Sort of like be like what's the thing, I mean, where the guy walks up to the little kid walks up and he goes, please sir, can I have some more?
Oliver.
Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah, exactly. I think that's sort of like, it really kind of drives me, it gets me really frustrated. So like, it really frustrates me that so many people, I kind of see them in this sort of like, please sir, can I have some more? Just like they just can't reach it. They haven't decided what they actually want to do. They haven't really even thought about it. They actually, in a way, and maybe this is it, maybe I'm being unfair, maybe they don't even believe that they have any power to get what they want. That is what I was saying before when I said that realization where I was like, oh, I don't need to be the guy who is like, oh, I'm not good enough, I can't talk, I can't reach out. I can just be like, oh, I am the guy who actually just, I can reach out, and it doesn't matter if anybody, knocks me back or whatever, but I'm just going to put myself out there. It's same deal, right? It's all under that same umbrella.
Yes.
That people really need to just take freaking control of where they're going in life and own it, and ownership. Actually own it, and don't be, because there's, that's another kind of thing we could go down. But like this, people feel like kind of victims. They're sort of like in that situation because like the thing happened to them, and it wasn't their fault. And like, You know, like I'm sitting here, and I mean, like I got
You could be
focal
crying.
dystonia, and
Yeah, you could be crying a river about that. Yeah.
absolutely. But you know, and it just, you know, and I'm not sort of like under, you know, I know it's people in different situations, but I think broadly speaking, like people don't set goals, and I think it really could help them. I think that people don't actually think that they're in control of the direction of their life. They are. It is in their control. They can do something about it. And I think that, and it's so sad that there's a lot of unhappy wedding musicians out there.
Well, what I hear you saying is, and I want to actually ask you very pragmatically about some of this goal setting, because selfishly for myself, I think I could use it, and I think a lot of people can too. I hear you saying that this is not so much about like, well, there's a right and wrong. Oh, every musician should endeavor to make $250,000. Oh no, every musician should endeavor to be creatively fulfilled at all times. What I hear you saying, and what I think is really important to make a distinction here, is that it's about self-awareness, right? Yeah. It's about what you want, and it's about getting really fucking honest with yourself about what you actually want. And if you've never asked yourself those questions, it might be time, right? If you find yourself coming home from a gig and just drinking yourself to sleep and feeling like, ugh, and being unfulfilled, I love that you use that word, unfulfilled. It might be time to have a think about goal setting. And I've always had this sort of misnomer that setting goals isn't cool, that you should always just be at the creative whim. Well, that's maybe for a 20-year-old, but is it for a 42-year-old? I don't know that it is.
I think like setting goals is going to make you happier, because then you actually, because okay, you'll have thought like, what do I want? Like, what is going to make me fulfilled? What's going to make me happy creatively or whatever? What's going to make me happy? And then, like, actually having some kind of idea of what that is, even that is going to get you, like, we've all heard about sort of like visualization, put up the visualization board and stuff like that. So what that's saying is, even if you are not going to strategically work yourself towards the goal, even just knowing what the goal is, is you're going to be sort of like much more, you're gonna have much more like a higher chance of actually getting the goal, right?
And so I wonder too, Scott. I'm sorry. I wonder if I wonder if this is so. Yes, you have to know what the goal is, but you also have to be okay saying, I don't know that I want to be a creative musician making my own records. I think I want to own a wedding band franchise.
Oh yeah,
like
absolutely.
You have to be okay, because there's a thing in music, and I wonder if you've experienced this. There's a thing in music where like, oh, chasing the money's not cool or whatever, right? Or like it's all about the art, or it's all about. But what if you want to live in a certain place? You want to raise your kids on a lake. You want to. I'm not talking about this for me. I'm just saying. I
sounds
think musicians,
good, dude. I could do with the lake.
Good to But I think that sometimes musicians are reluctant to admit financial goals because it's not in the zeitgeist that's okay, that's cool to say, hey, I want to make $250,000 a year. And so I'm going to push my career in that direction to do that. Like, we all think that, oh no, man, we gotta be slogging it out in the jazz clubs for $50 a night, you know, like, if you want that, do that. But if you don't, if you want to make money, you have to start thinking about, how am I going to go about doing that? And I think, yes, knowing what the goal is good, but it's also about really being okay with your goal.
By being
secure in the fact
like
that
understanding your values as well.
Yes,
like understanding your own values. I think that's sort of like a key piece to it as well, because I think that it's easy to not kind of like reflect on what values are really important to you. Like I've been definitely guilty of that in the past, and I think that it's something I've been thinking about recently and talking about Lisa, sort of like what are our values as a family? Like that's like, it's not something we've really spoken. We had a great conversation the other day, a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, we really need to sort of like help the kids sort of like get, you know, like, so we were all on the same page in terms of like what values our family has. And she was
like that.
What do you mean? And I was like, well, check it out. I was like, this is why religion works to a certain extent, right? Because because it gives you inbuilt values, right? You have
a rule book.
It's a rule book. It gives you these values, right?
Yeah.
Myself and my wife, we're not religious. I was like, okay, but we still need values, right? So we need to teach our kids values. Like, is competitive one of our values? I'm not sure it is or it isn't, but is it? So can we talk about it as a family? Can we talk about it with our kids? Like, nobody ever talked about like what competitiveness is, like, even was to me when I was a kid. Or like leadership, for instance. Leadership is a great one. Like, is leadership a value that we like admire or work towards within our family? I'm not sure it is. It definitely wasn't in my. I didn't even know what the word leadership meant. Okay, so I think that like these like just having an understanding of your values and stuff like that really helps with these.
Oh yeah,
it kind of sort of like pulls it all together a little bit. We could talk about that another day, but with the goal setting, man. It's really important. It's really important just to sort of like have a clear vision of where you're going, because it means you can actually get there. Like if you can just like, however sort of like outlandish it is. So for instance, it could be, there could be a 22-year-old, 21-year-old listening to this podcast right now, and they might be thinking, you know what, I want to move to the States, and I want to be a musician in LA. I want to get on that scene.
Yep.
I'd be like, yeah, great. Well, that is a great goal, first of all. That is a freaking great goal. And now, like, you should be thinking to yourself, well, how am I going to do that?
Yep.
The key thing is, anybody could do that. Anybody could do that. Anybody could be like, I want to move to LA. I want to get involved in the session scene, whatever it is, or whatever scene it is that you want to be involved in. You can go do it. Literally. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's actually easy. The hard thing is actually getting out of our minds and sort of like the mess in here, and just getting out of our own way and just going and doing it. And then you could be like, okay, well, if I'm going to go to LA, where do the musicians live? Where do they hang out? Is there any music universities? Is there any music courses I can sign on to? So I'm meeting other musicians, and I'm going to sort of like create some kind of sort of like network out there. Or is there any sort of like jam sessions or like places that I can go to? Like, I could get on Instagram. I can start hooking up with people on Instagram in LA, become a content creator, get a following together, get like 2,000, 3,000 people following you. Like, find out who's in LA, go meet them, do things, give value to them people. Suddenly you're in LA, you're living in LA, and you may be sort of like working at a breakfast joint or something, and you're cooking. I used to clean floors in Tesco's. It's my first job. I used to sweep floors in the supermarket, and I used to steal sweets off the floor because I was a little greedy thing. If sweets had fallen out the pick and mix, man, they were going in my... I'd blow the dust off and they were going in my mouth. Okay? I was like...
Those were your sweets now.
Yeah, and I was doing that. Why was I doing that? Because I needed to do that to get to where I wanted to at the time. So I was like sweeping the floor. So, you move to LA and you do that and you keep your eye on your goal, and you just make sure that you're just being strategic as well at the same time. Not by being, like, you can be a bit pushy and stuff. Just be like a little sidebar. Don't be, like, you can be a little too pushy.
Sure. Yeah.
We all know one musician that sort of like hounds people for gigs, right? You don't want to be that guy or girl, right? You want to be the cool one that's sort of like, there's a cool way to do it and there's sort of like a not so cool way to do it. But you get a network, and then you just, and you do it. And here's the thing. It might not work out.
Right.
It might not work out. I know people that moved to LA and they were great players, and it didn't work out for whatever reason. Like maybe they were a little too old to go and do the networking thing, or, and obviously you're never too old to do the networking thing, but maybe they just couldn't be asked anymore. And they were just like, oh, this is too much hard work, and, and all of that thing. But the point is that, like, it's more important to set a goal and fail than it is to just not set the goal. Do you know what I mean? Like, set the goal, fail, and then go do it again.
Oh, but what?
Go do it again.
But Scott, what if I'm racked with insecurity and failing means that I'm not good enough to do it, right? Like, I think that a lot of people that aren't setting goals are actually scared of not fulfilling their goal, and that if they don't meet their goal, that will mean that they're a failure. But I hear you saying that's not the case.
I think they're just scared about I just think they're scared about being embarrassed. I don't think they think they can't do it. They think, why me? I think it's all of those kind of sort of like insecurities that like a lot of people have got, most people have got, I think. And like really, like I'm not sure how you separate yourself from that. I think that I talked about how my experience of it, and I think it's probably different for everybody. But I think that you absolutely need to. There's a great book called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, and he talks about in that book this experience of the realization that his mind was different to his consciousness. And his mind is a machine, and it's trying to figure out problems all the time. That's what it's there for. It's there to figure out problems and worry about things and solve problems and stuff. And he talks in the book about this kind of sort of like out of body experience where his consciousness was like almost viewing his mind, being like, wow, that's pretty weird, because your mind is like your heart. It's got a function, right? Your heart pumps your blood around, your liver cleans your blood, kidneys do the things, right? They've all got your problem. Your mind's there to sort of like to solve problems and and keep you safe. Got to keep them safe. Don't want to be embarrassed. I mean, all of that, right? And this consciousness. My point is that you need to be able to create this sort of like separate entity that just calls out your own bullshit and just reminds yourself to be like, oh, you do feel like that. You've got that part of your personality, but you don't have to choose to listen to it. It is a choice. That's really key. I never lost that. I've still got that. I've still got that kid inside me who's not good enough, who is scared.
Yes,
I was the kid in that. I was like, the worst thing that could ever happen to me is like I had to put my hand up at school. It terrified me. Yeah. If the teacher said, "Oh, Scott, can you go and get somebody from this class?" I actually went up to the class and I'd just stand outside for 2 minutes. And then sometimes I'd knock if I could muster up the courage to do so. And sometimes I'd just walk away and I'd be like, oh, they weren't there. And I'd lie.
Wow.
Because I couldn't bring myself to knock on the door.
Because you felt like you were going to be embarrassed, like eyes on you.
Oh, yeah.
You were gonna do terrified. Wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, terrified. So there's
come a long way, baby.
So there's absolutely like we all have that in us to a certain extent. Mine was kind of on fire and really bad, but we've all got it, right? But it is a conscious choice to actually separate yourself from that. But it is not going to go away. I think that's the key thing. Yeah, is that part of your personality is always going to be there, and it's going to be shouting at whoever you create, because you actually can create somebody that is very different from who you are right now if you want to. And that's what I did. There's like, I could talk about that.
Oh, that's amazing.
Let me just like add this one thing. Like I actually really, really shy. Do you know I said that there's always something to learn from everybody? Well, that's my belief anyway.
Yes.
And I think that it doesn't need sort of I don't think it needs to. There doesn't need to be a long timeline of when it can sort of like happen. So, for instance, I've certainly listened to a podcast and it's changed my life. I've been like. Yeah. And I'm not saying anybody's going to listen to this podcast and change their life. Yeah. Let me just put that out there. My point is that there's no kind of sort of like, if you sort of like are listening to this and you're like, oh, I actually want this to be true for me. I want to separate myself from my inner anxiety and stuff like that. You don't need to it's not going to take a week or a month. You can actually just choose to do it. And then it's just sort of like a reminder to yourself to actually do that thing, right? You can actually choose to do it right now. And this happened to me. I was at the local sports centre. I was terrified of everybody. I was like a really nervous child, couldn't speak to anybody. I'm not really sure where that came from. It was just who I was at the time. And I was maybe like 12 or 13, maybe a little older, 13 or 14. And I was stood in the dinner queue at a local sports centre with my tray. And a friend of mine, he was like a couple of years old, he was like 15 or 16, and called Ian Moran. He was a drummer, and he was like just one of the most chatty guys. He was chatting with everybody all of the time. He was chatting with everybody. He was joking with everybody. He was like kind of flirty with everybody.
Life of the party.
Like, he was, like he wasn't like super loud. He wasn't like overly loud. He was just really kind of sort of like just really nice to everybody around him. And I'm in front of he's in front of me, in the dinner queue of the sports centre. And and he sort of like just started talking really nicely to the woman behind the till and joking with her, and she was like maybe in her 50s or something like that, and he's being cheeky and joking and stuff like that. And I looked at her, and it was like somebody just dropped a penny. It was like, I was like, oh. And I imagined what I was going to be like going next, and I was going to be head down, and kind of like withdrawn, and how that's going to make me feel, how she feels in that situation, in that interaction. I was like, it was just somebody showing me the sort of like, it was like you can go down this route in your life, or you can go down this route. It was like that, and I was like, oh shit.
Right.
I was like, I need to be like that.
Yeah.
I don't need to be like this. This feels shit. I'm right here. It feels terrible. I need to be like Ian. And at that exact point, I was just like, oh, I'm going to be like that. And I actually kind of sort of like joined in at the time with Ian. He's talking to her, and I'm like joking. Remember, I'm like 13 or whatever, right? And I'm joking and stuff like that. And it felt great.
Oh.
And I was like, this felt great. Anyway, so I went home, and I used to walk to school. And the next day I walked to school, and every single person that came my way, like I can remember this woman walking towards me with a pram or something like that. Yeah, I mean, she's walking towards me with a pram. She's walking towards me. I was like, hey, how you doing? You all right? Having a great morning? I'd never said that in my life. It felt so bizarre. I was like, she looked at me and she was like, yeah, you? I was like, yeah, I'm having a great morning.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, I'm gonna get into this, and I practiced it, and I just made that decision. I was just like, I'm not gonna be that person anymore. I'm gonna be like him, because he's having a much better time than I am, and she's loving him. She's having a just like, what am I doing?
Wow.
This realization, and it was just like so impactful, and that's been really like hugely impactful on my entire life. And it didn't, again, just going back to what I was saying earlier, it wasn't like, it didn't take a month. It was like, I actually decided at that point, I was like, oh, I don't want to be this person anymore, and I'm actually just gonna have to sort of like do something and separate myself from actually who I'm sort of like pre-baked right now, who I'm pre-baked to be.
Yes.
I need to do something completely different. But here's the weird thing, right?
Yeah.
That kid's still there.
Of course.
He's still there. Of course. I feel like anxious when I go into social situations. Like, I don't like it. I mean, I actually don't like it. Lisa's like, oh, we should go. I have to. It's an effort. It's an effort to go and do that. But if you meet me, I think we've met, right? But if you met me in sort of like, okay, so basically nobody knows that. I don't think even my wife knows it. I don't even think my parents know it anymore. That person's so far gone. Like, he was the 13-year-old kid, that existed back then. But the strange kind of sort of like lonely part about it, I guess it's not lonely, but it's still there. Like, even when I talk about it, makes me tear up a little bit. Or like, sort of like, in a weird way. I'm sort of like, because I feel sort of like bad for that kid back then, even though he exists now, even though he's sort of like inside. But it's anyway, deep stuff.
No. That's so good. I wonder too. Oh boy, I've got some stuff like this too. But I will say that, like, it's not so much about shaming that kid, right? And saying, okay, that kid is bad, and I'm never going to be that kid, and now I'm this new kid, and I'm a better kid. It's about saying, hey, in order to survive, in order to make goals, in order to be the person I want to be, I need to learn how to do this angle and create this new kid, while still appreciating, not judging, and maybe even saying, hey, like, probably when you come home from a social situation, you've been out, you've been hobnobbing with all the bass players, probably that time alone is going to edify that 13-year-old boy. It's like the recharge, right? And to not judge it and be like, oh, this kid is, I never want to see this kid again. But like, if you feel bad for that kid, maybe you need to find a way to say, hey, it's okay. I really briefly, before I got married, my parents were, they married each other, had me, divorced, married each other again, the same people. Had my sister, divorced, each married a separate person, and then divorced, and now they're both single. That's just Okay.
Oh, I thought they were going to get back together again. Like,
no, but they've been married 3 times. 2 times were to each other. Before I got married, I had this notion that I'm not going to be able to do it because my parents couldn't do it, and they're lovely people, and I won't be able to do it if they can't do it. And my friend Bruce Balgard, who I spoke about on this podcast earlier, said this thing, and it's helped me every day since. And you can apply it to anything. He said, that behavior that your father exhibited or your mother exhibited or that you exhibit that you know is not behavior you want to go forward with, but it exists. What you have to do is you have to imagine it as a dragon, a fire-breathing dragon that is invisible. And then instead of it being the invisible dragon that is behind every interaction, you have to imagine yourself dipping a brush in red paint and painting the fucking dragon red. So you see it. You say.
So you see it, yeah.
There it is. And not to judge it and say, I never want to see you, you're awful. In fact, no, you invite it in a way. You say, I see you. Yeah. I've painted you red. I've chosen to see you. I've chosen to paint you a color that is vibrant, that I can see. But I am now choosing not to let my life's decisions be controlled by you. And it was
exactly that. That's huge.
Big deal.
Yeah.
It was a big deal for me.
Isn't it strange how well, it's not strange. I think I guess it's amazing how the exercise of just choosing to like visualize things in a certain way or kind of depict them in a certain way in your mind actually can change like how you feel about things. Like it can actually it can play out in your life. Like when Bruce said that to you, just the visualization of that actually like really helped you.
It really helped me. Yeah.
Yeah. It's been full on, this one, man.
Hey, if anybody is like, oh boy, here we are at the end of the podcast, and these guys are talking about painting the imaginary dragon red, and the 13-year-old boy left in the dust, the shy. Would you mind, Scott, if I took a couple minutes and talk about a really practical thing that a friend of mine did in terms of the music space? So check this out. Everybody listening, check this out. If you don't know who Phoebe Cates is, Scott, do you know Phoebe Cates? Phoebe Cates was a singer in the UK that Killer Harmonies does. She's a wonderful singer-songwriter.
She worked with Corey, right?
Yes, but check this out. She messages Corey Wong and says, hey, I see that you're coming to tour in the UK. I want to open up for you. I'm an amazing artist. Here are all the links to all my stuff. I would love to be on the road with you and open up for you. And he wrote her back and said, I don't need an opening act. I need a tour manager. So I don't want you to sing. I hear your stuff. It's great, but that's not what I need. I need a tour manager. Do you do that? And she didn't. She was not a tour manager. She'd never even thought in a million years about being a tour manager. To her, that felt like sweeping the floor at the Tesco, right? Not what she wants to do. But she said, absolutely, I'm a tour manager. And then she went, oh, dear God, right? What have I done? Yeah. And it's an incredible story because Corey goes, okay. And then she's on Google, like, how do you tour manage? How do you tour manager? And I mean, I remember talking to her. I used to do these things where I would interview people via stories on Instagram a long time ago. I don't do that as much anymore, but she was sort of reluctant to tell the story. And I'm like, Phoebe, you got to tell the story. It's so good, because she felt a little embarrassed about doing it. She's not a tour manager. She's a singer, God damn it. Right. That's what was.
Oh yeah.
But she ended up doing it. Right. And she ended up doing it well. Corey and the fellas come over. Now she's tour managing. And guess what? As a result of that interaction, Corey's like, you know what? You should do a couple. You should do a couple with the band. You know what? You should open up this show. And pretty soon it became a thing, and they had a relationship, and she was doing the thing that she wanted to do. But before she got there, there was a step of bringing this artist, Corey Wong, value that he actually needed. He didn't need a singer. He needed a tour manager. And then she came to the States and did a record, and he produced it, and I got to play on it a little bit. That's how I met her, right? Now she lives in Brooklyn. She's doing her thing. But she was so reluctant to tell that story because it felt embarrassing. And I just felt like it was the opposite. I felt like it was incredible.
I think it's the opposite. I think it's amazing. I think she should have a t-shirt.
I do
too. She should have a t-shirt, do you know what I mean?
Yes.
I don't know what it would say on the t-shirt to make. It might be a lot of text on there, but my point is that she should be. I guess that it's just a really inspirational story for other young musicians or older musicians of just putting yourself out there, and maybe the situation isn't perfect for you right now, but just do it anyway. Throw yourself in. And maybe it will turn into whatever. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, it's amazing.
If you're focused on meeting someone's needs, if you're focused on delivering value, it will lead to another chapter. Will it lead to exactly what you want? Who knows? But it will lead to a relationship. It will lead to conversation. And those things will lead other places, right? Yeah. So instead of just thinking about like, hey, let's do a record together. Well, be a little more self-aware. This is not music. This is PR. I say this a lot, that this is not actually music that we're doing. This is PR. This is public relations. This is people. Yeah. So figure out when you have that goal set, and Scott's talked about setting that goal, think about the person at the end of that goal and think about how best you can serve them, how best you can bring them value so that you will eventually meet this goal.
Ian Value Allison. Honestly, I love the way you think about value. Like, it's so great. It's so great. You're just sort of like, you're just throwing value everywhere, man. You're just sort of like, when we meet, you're going to just throw a heap of value on me. I don't know what it's going to look like.
Yeah, you're going to be going, hold on, where's the value? And I'm like,
where's the value?
Hold on a minute.
Guys, thanks so much for listening. Oh, I should say I apologize if I'm not sure we did sort of like a false start to this podcast because my computer broke in the middle of it. But just to back up a little bit, I've just had no sleep. So if I've seemed to meander a little bit during this conversation, it's because I'm half the man I usually am. I will be back on form next week. Anyway, leave an iTunes review and all of that good stuff. That would be amazing. Obviously, massive thanks to Mr. Ian Value Allison here. Lisa's calling me. She's like, it's dinner time. Where are you?
Where are you? You got to get back to it.
Cheers, anyway, guys, thanks a lot. Yeah, see you in a bit, guys. Bye.